from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to page through a catalog. One page at a time. As you drift off, it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. All right, everybody, it's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, Helix Sleep, and they've got some amazing deals coming up. You're going to hear about it at the end of this ad read, so do not miss out. I want you to right now to open up your phone. Just do it with me. I'm going to go to helixsleep.com/sleep, and if I were you, I wouldn't want to, I don't know what your relationship with your bed is right now. I've had a long-term relationship with my Helix mattress. It fits my needs, how I sleep. I sleep on my side, I sleep on my stomach, but now I'm sleeping more on my back, and I'm relocating, and unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I could ship my mattress because I have to move my stuff before I move, but that's okay. It means I get a new Helix, so I'm going to take the Helix quiz right now, helixsleep.com/sleep, 30 seconds, and you can, okay, one or two sleepers, one, okay, let me put in my email. Put in my name here, give a little bit of information. Okay, what size mattress am I considering? I got that down. All right. I don't know if are you taking this quiz with me at helixsleep.com/sleep? All right, toss. I guess I toss and turn. So I'm going to pick toss and turn. And what kind of firmness? Okay, I'm going to pick my firmness that fits my needs. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get yours, Okay, I'm going to talk about my back there, talk about temperature. All right, I got matched with my mattress. Oh, boy, and it's a different one than I have now just because I made a couple changes to how I sleep. So I'm going to check this out and think about it for my next Helix I'm going to be sleeping in. So take that Helix quiz. It's going to be coming right to your door, but most of all, it'll be a mattress that fits you, your needs, and how you sleep. And the best news is that Helix has amazing deals for Sleep With Me listeners, but only if you use our link. So go to helixsleep.com/sleep for 25% off site-wide during their extended Labor Day sale. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for 25% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody's Scoots, and I need your attention because we're going to be spending the whole night together. If you're an all-night listener, right, you're going to be listening to me when you go to bed at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m., at 6 a.m. You listen to episode after episode after episode, but I need your attention. All-night listeners, the future of the show really is in your corner, and we're in the middle of this drive that we're only a third of the way through it to get more all-night listeners to support the show. And maybe you're one of them, because John R. said, I had no idea. I now realize I had inadvertently placed myself in a side channel where I just didn't get the message. I've been one of those people who meant to support the show but never did. I'm doing my part now. And if so, Sleep With Me keeps you company all night long. Like, maybe you're the one I'm trying to get through to. Maybe you're the only one listening and paying attention, the only all-night listener paying attention right now. Can you support the show at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus? Will you support the show at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus? If you're saying, Scoots, I can't afford to do it. Scoots, I chose, I am an all-night listener, but I don't support podcasts. Well, if you're one of those two groups, just help me root that there is someone listening, that person is hearing me right now. Now, maybe you're that person, or maybe you're rooting that they're out there. I'm an all-night listener, too. I need this show. 8 hours a night, I need it. And I need somebody out there to support it. It's changed my life. And I hope somebody that listens all night long like I do supports it right now. So if you're the person we're rooting for, you're hearing me like John did for the first time, that's okay. All you need to do is go to sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus and sign up right now. Thanks. Mystery Bard. A lot of people help out on the show. Who are they?
This posty poster son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes too. Carl W. the legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound or on the website. I am the Mystery Bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer.
Mystery Bard, but there's also a tiny way anybody can help out the show. It's free. It helps out the show a little bit. And that's following the podcast wherever you listen to it, or commenting if you listen on Spotify or YouTube. It really helps other people discover the show. It helps you stay up to date on the latest episodes. And only 50% of people follow or subscribe. It's free to follow or subscribe in podcast apps. So if you do that, it just gives it helps people discover the show, and it helps you stay up to date on the show. So follow or subscribe in your podcast app. That'll help out the show a little bit. Not necessarily keep us going forever, but I'd appreciate it. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow Bedtime Stories from Sleep With Me. That's in every podcast app, too. That has a story-only episodes. It'll add it to your sleepy repertoire. Thanks, and what do you say we get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever is keeping you awake. It could be thoughts on your mind, physical sensations. So thoughts like would be stuff you're thinking about or that your brain's thinking about from the past, present, or future. Whether it's, work or regular, work life or, personal life, past life, dream life. I actually have a tangent to go on that I've made a part of my personal journey that involves thinking. But it could be thoughts, could be feelings, anything emotionally coming up for you, connected to the thoughts or driving the thoughts, or independent. Independent, from the dreams that I've known, as somebody did not sing about Albuquerque. So thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, anything you're experiencing physically. It could be something else. It could be changes in your routine, your time, your temperature, your weather, work schedule, whatever it is that is keeping you up. I'd like to take your mind off of stuff and keep you company while you drift off. And what I propose to do is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, all to create a place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake so you can fall asleep and drift off. That's the plan. Now, it does take some explanation if you're new. And what I'll do is I'll explain things, then I'll show things by just talking about by what I call the old authentic method, being myself, and then I'll wrap it up. So a couple of things to know if you're new right away. And this is backed up by hundreds of thousands of comments, this is a podcast that takes a few times to get used to. So when you first get here, just like most sleep stuff, you might be skeptical or doubtful, or you got that doubtful, hopeful thing going where you're hoping it'll work, but you're also like, well, I've been through this sleep solution before, the old sleep solution washing machine rigmarole. If I could count the number of times my mom said, did you put rigmarole in the washing machine? I said, no, rigatoni, Mom. I did put some rigatoni in there. Once again, I tried to create my own band, and I was singing, I got a pocket full of rigatoni tonight. And so, yeah, no, I didn't put, what's rigmarole? Are we experiencing rigmarole right now, Mother? From me putting rigatoni, I didn't put rigatoni directly in the washing machine this time. I did last week when I made a song. I got a washing machine full of rigatoni tonight. I actually attempted to make rigatoni in the washing machine. So, yeah. And believe it or not, I think it is a viable method because the washing machine is like a colander or whatever. No, how come no one ever thinks about that? I'm sure there's people out there that have made pasta and wash. If you're listening, don't do it because like unless you found a washing machine on out there somewhere out there like Fievel did. If you did, I mean, I've seen something recently where people use a washing machine for something, but you could would you eat at a restaurant where the pasta was prepared in a like they say, yeah, we got machine washed rigatoni and prepared? Because think about it, it's if you had the right temperature water. I mean, that might just work. I mean, again, we'd want a food-grade washing machine. Well, last time I asked at a store, they just looked at me, and they said, for getting food stains out? I said, no, food-grade, restaurant-grade washing machine. And they said, get Sandy to talk to this guy, because I persisted. And then Sandy came over, and they said, what do you want? What are you trying to do? And I said, well, eventually I'd like to make a rigatoni in a washing machine. But for starters, I'll just start with cooking pasta. And they said, why? And I said, because I could. And they said, what do you mean, because you could? And I said, well, I'd like to know if it's possible to make rigatoni or just cook pasta in a washing machine. I think it is. Oh, also, I'm making a sleep podcast. So, Sandy, I'll have to get back to you. So, this podcast takes 2 or 3 tries to get used to. I have no idea where any of that came from, other than it's something I'd like. Now it's on my bucket list. And if there's anything that YouTube's good for, I guarantee you, when I get off of here, I'll look it up and somebody will be cooking pasta in a washing machine. And they'll be way more industrious than me. Talk about they'll say, "Oh yeah, no, we found a food grade washing machine." And I'd say, "Well, now it's a pasta machine because I don't think I want to wash my clothes." Most people would say, "Oh, why don't you need pasta from a washing machine?" And I'd say, understandably, it was never used to wash clothes, and we got filter on there or whatever, but. I wouldn't want to, would you want to wear clothes that were washed in pasta water? Wouldn't that, you say, Scoots, how come you can't move anymore? Why is we say, where do you starch your shirts? They're so crisp. I'd say these are pasta water. There's a lot of starch in my shirts because they're washed in pasta water. Okay, so to get back, if you're new, this podcast takes some getting used to. Another thing, which I probably made clear, this is a podcast you really need to pay attention to. You just kind of listen because most of the stuff I talk about only makes partial sense. So you say, well, okay, hot water, churning, water gets drained out through holes. All those things are somewhat like you would do in production of pasta. Or noodles. You could say, yeah, we make noodles too. I wouldn't want to do ramen. Like, for the time being, I think we should just stick to straight cooking of noodles or pasta products. Yes, definitely only in my imagination. Okay, so this podcast takes some getting used to. It's a podcast you don't really pay attention to. Also, it doesn't really put you to sleep, believe it or not. I'm here to keep you company while you fall asleep. Versus putting you to sleep, but you drift off. That's why shows are over an hour, to give you plenty of time to drift off. Or if you can't sleep, that you have some confidence or some reassurance because you know I'm going to be here for you for like the next hour. And if you need more episodes, you could just queue them up episode after episode. So that's part of it. What else do you need to know? Oh, structure of the show can also throw new people off, so I'll tell you about that next. Show starts off with a greeting, so you feel seen and welcome. Then there's a listener support, like support resources for you and our community. Then there's sponsors. That's what supports the show being free, are the listeners who support the sponsors. Then there's an intro. And the intro goes from about minute 6 or minute 8 to about minute 20-something. And at first, it could kind of be, some people really have strong feelings about it because they say, what is this intro? Is it an ad? Is it they say, no, it's kind of a show within a show. I mean, this one very clearly is a show within a show because you say, holy mackerel. Scoots is serious about this pasta, fresh washed pasta. Maybe I could do that. I don't think that would be a very good selling technique, but I could see myself out there with the buskers of the world next to somebody selling newspapers. I could say fresh washed pasta, starch your shirts, fill your belly, all in one machine. Not at the same time, though, so I need about an hour and 45 minutes for the complete deal. But you could eat pasta with your shirt off while I wash your shirt. Then we air dry it, and while it air dries, it becomes incredibly starched and stiff. So, no takers. Okay, get back to the sleep podcast. Don't listen to me. No pressure to fall asleep. Yeah, and I'm here to be your boyfriend, your companion in the deep dark night. So yeah, if you can't sleep or you wake up or you need help getting back to sleep, or you just need something during the day, a friend to take your mind off stuff, that's my job. So those are two things. Structure. That's what I was talking about. The intro goes on and on and on and on and on. And for new listeners, that could kind of seem a little pointless because you say, can't you get to the point? I say, well, that's the point. The pointlessness is the point. And yeah, no, with this machine, we're not multitasking. We're working and not in parallel. If I had two machines, I could work in parallel. I could drain. What if we did that? We drain the pasta water right into the shirt starcher. Shirt starcher 5000, Gene. Oh boy, it starches your shirts with starch, actual starch, not spray and starch or, something. We use depends. We have a bunch of different starches available. You got some semolina. We got other kind, we got a buckwheat. Would you like some buckwheat starch in your shirt, Gene? The intro for the new listener, it's to introduce you to the show, but for the regular listener, one, they kind of enjoy this nonsense. They barely enjoy it because of just kind of listening. And you say, well, it's a half-brained idea. It's both harebrained and half-brained, but I can see that someone with Scoots is, that he would believe. But think about it, because water drains somewhere. So, and it would already be hot because we would be using it to cook pasta. And we may have to cook pasta in stages because I just thought of that. We don't have a way to generate heat. So we could have about 4 or 5. I guess we'd have to run it. Well, it's a work in progress. That's like Sleep With Me. So the intro goes on and on and on to ease you into bedtime, to give you some distance from the day. So a lot of regular listeners are getting ready for bed or doing some sort of wind down activity or getting comfortable and cozy and drifting off during the intro. And then we'll have the story. Tonight we'll be paging through a catalog. And when we talk about pointless meanders, holy moly, I recorded this episode yesterday. I said, man, 400 pages of catalog. It only felt like 5,000. It really did. I think because I was waiting to get to the toys, and I never did. A lot of, I'd say, what is that, a 500-page catalog? What is it, 150 pages of different kind of pajamas and slippers? And they'd say, come on, Scoots, there's only 50 pages of pajamas and slippers. I'd say, was there that much demand? But I guess you see, we got to have pajamas for anybody that wants pajamas. That's how you get them in the door. Pajamas and gifts that you would give someone that you don't but you don't really know what they want. So you say, well, it's a pipe and letter opener stationery sets for opening letters for your pipe smoking and your stationery needs. Thanks again. And also comes with aftershave. Wow. So the intro goes on and on and on to ease you into bedtime. I guess that was my point there. So 3% of people start the show at 20 minutes or 22 minutes or 21 minutes and try to skip the intro. But for most listeners, it's part of the bedtime routine. Then there'll be then there's business between the intro and the episode. That's, again, how I'm able to bring you the show free instead of behind a paywall. Then I'll talk about this catalog. I'll go through it page by page while you drift off. So I do the work so you don't have to listen. And then the show ends with some thank yous and good nights. So that's the structure of the show. The other thing you need to know is the reason I make the show is, one, because I've been there. Tossing, turning, that's where I was last night. Trouble getting to sleep, yes. Trouble staying asleep a little bit, but more trouble getting to sleep last night. So I know how it feels. And then also the other thing is you deserve a good night's sleep. You deserve a place where you can rest, a safe place where you could drift off, so that you can live your life and your life can be fuller. And if I can help with that, it's my honor. Now, it does not work for everybody. I'm an acquired taste. Clearly, I would not call myself a visionary, but I would say I have out-of-the-box ideas because, well, I don't think I'm the only person that's thought of cooking pasta in a washing machine. I will say that I probably am the one that talked to the most people about it, unless there's like a YouTube video with 1 million hits. Or what views, because, I mean, like, again, I mean, I get the reason, though, to wrap up that story is that when I talked to Sandy, that Sandy explained to me that Sandy used to work in restaurant equipment. And Sandy said, washing machines 5 times as much as an industrial pasta basket cooker. I said, what's that? And I said, it's a bit like a deep fryer. You've probably seen it. You just didn't notice it. It's for cooking pasta. And I say, you know what? I have seen it. And I say, yeah, it's just, those cost 1/3 of just a home. And I say, really? And Sandy said, well, you're imagining all this. So I don't know really. But that's why I can't sell you multiple washing machines to cook pasta. And also, we don't have food-grade washing machines. That's why they're called washing machines and not pasta machines. And I said, but in a pinch, like if I needed to cook 5,000 pounds of pasta, Sandy, hello. Oh, okay. So that's how that story concluded. I don't think we'll see, I don't think I saw a pasta. Oh, I saw a pasta maker in this catalog coming up, but it wasn't a pasta cooker. Just thinking of like a song. I've been a pasta maker. I've been a pasta cooker, but I never laid my pasta in the sun. I've been a pasta joker. I haven't been a pasta toker, and I don't eat my pasta on the run. So anyway, I'm glad you're here. I really appreciate your time coming by and checking the show out. Give it a few tries. There's nothing to lose. I mean, it doesn't, if you don't like the show, I hope you find something else. I got a ton of other great sleep podcasts listed at sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. But I really hope I can help you. I really appreciate you checking the show out. I appreciate your time. Really want to help you fall asleep because it's going to make our world a better place if you're rested. And, yeah, thanks again for coming by. Here's a couple of ways for you regular listeners. I'm able to be here for you twice a week for free. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots here, and I know you might be getting ready. You're getting in bed. You're getting comfortable. If you fall asleep fast, it's critical you listen. If you fall asleep fast, this show's kind of designed to put people to sleep over a 20 or 30-minute period, but that's great. You're an exception to the rule. You fall asleep fast. That is awesome. But we need people who fall asleep fast to support the show. There's just no other way for us to pay the bills. And I don't know if you're the one I'm trying to get through to that's listening to me, that's hearing me right now for the first time, you're making that connection. Holy cow, I fall asleep in 5 minutes. I never thought about what it takes to make this show. I never thought about that it needs my support. Or maybe you're one of the people rooting for that person. Man, I hope that person's out there that's going to support the show because it makes my life better. I just can't support the show. But I know there's someone out there who is. Like Tiffany Y, who said, just because you could get something for free doesn't mean you should. I know if I have trouble sleeping, I just have to listen. I'll be out in in no time. That's definitely worth a few dollars a month. I'm pretty sure if you try it out and you fall asleep fast, you're going to have a great experience. And you could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But like I said, if you're not in a place to support the show right now, you've decided you're not going to support the show, then Root With Me is that fall asleep fast listener listening and hearing me right now. We just happen to catch you, and we're rooting for you. Root for them together because we need your support. Are you hearing us cheer for you and you say, wait, no, that is me. That is me. Just like Tiffany. I had no idea. Of course I want to support the show. It's changed my life so much for the better. So if you're that person, you'll be the hero, the heroine, the champion we're looking for, that we're rooting for, because you're not alone. We're all rooting for one another together here in the deep dark night. Thanks. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the second time you get to hear me say that. Welcome, because this episode is constructed from an intro from the past and our Read With Me episodes here. It's a Frankie and Victor episode with our friend Frank and his, so I'm reading from the book Victor and Frankie, also known as a famous Mary Shelley novel. And this is a little bit different than episodes we've done with Sleep With Me, but we tested this out on Sleep With Me Plus. It was so popular, we wanted to bring it to everyone. So it's me reading through a book, also paraphrasing, making stuff sleepy, but it's not perfectly sleepy. I mean, just like everything else we make, you know. It exists within this world, but it's pretty chill. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, more of Victor and Frankie. Thanks, everybody. Chapter 10. I spent the following day roaming through the valley. I stood beside the sources of the Arvillon, which take their rise in a glacier that with slow pace is advancing down from the summit of the hills to barricade the valley. The abrupt sides of the vast mountains were before me. The icy wall of the glacier overhung me. A few shattered pines were scattered around, and the solemn silence of this glorious presence chamber of imperial nature was broken only by the brawling waves or the fall of some vast fragment. The thunder sound rolling in the valleys, or the creaking reverberated along the mountains of the accumulated ice, which, through the silent working of immutable laws, was ever and anon rent and torn, as if it had been but a plaything in their hands. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized it. In some degree also they diverted my mind from the thoughts over which it had brooded for the last month. I retired to rest at night. My slumbers, as it were, waited on and ministered to by the assemblance of grand shapes which I had contemplated during the day. They congregated round me, the unstained snowy mountaintop, the glittering pinnacle, the pined woods and the ragged bare ravine, the eagle soaring amidst the clouds. They all gathered round me and bade me be at peace. Where had they fled when the next morning I awoke? All of the soul-inspiriting fled with sleep, and dark melancholy clouded every thought. The rain was pouring in torrents, and the thick mists hid the summits of the mountains, so that I even saw not the faces of those mighty friends. Still I would penetrate their misty veil and seek them in their cloudy retreats. What were rain and storm to me? Right? I mean, my middle name is Rain and Storm. To me, in rain and storm. My mule was brought to the door. Hurry up. Let's get that mule to the door, eh? This might sound like I'm out roughing it, but read between the lines, because my mule was brought to the door, and I resolved to ascend to the summit of Montenevere, excuse me. I didn't have someone to tell me the correct pronunciations for this place. I was roughing it. I didn't have someone to tell me the correct pronunciations. I did say I was roughing it. I remember the effect that the view of the tremendous and ever-moving glacier had produced upon my mind when I first saw it. It had then filled me with a sublime ecstasy that gave wings to the soul and allowed it to soar from the obscure world to light and joy. The sight of the awful and majestic in nature had indeed always the effect of solemnizing my mind and causing me to forget the passing cares of life. I determined to go without a guide, for I was well acquainted with the path, and the presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. The ascent is precipitous, but the path is cut into continual and short windings, which enable you to surmount the perpendicularity of the mountain. Perpendicularity. I say with very little hilarity, but I like saying perpendicularity. Oh, verity. In a scene terrifically desolate, in 1,000 spots the traces of winter and snowfall and snow tumbles may be perceived, where trees lie sleeping and strewn on the ground, some no longer trees but just future parts of the loamy soil, others bent, leaning upon the jutting rocks of the mountain, or transversely upon other trees, snuggling, if you will, but snuggling in the harsh weather. The path, as you ascend higher, is intersected by ravines of snow, down which stones continually roll, like rolling stones. Some make the slightest sound, and some, like your rolling stones, speak in a loud voice, producing air sufficient to draw sounds upon the speaker. Like a speaker, I guess. The pines are not tall or luxuriant, but they are somber. And I said, can we get some luxury pines here? I'm sorry, Mother Nature, but I'm used to something a little bit more luxuriant. Well, this is near the peak of the mountain, son, so it's just, see, I don't know if you would know the way the world works. Oh, by the way, Mother Nature, I've unlocked all your secrets, so I actually created my own tree-based being. Oh, really? Were they luxuriant? Anyway, I've got to get back to sorry, Mother Nature, I got to get back to my hike. But these trees are somber. They add air of severity to the scene. Sounds familiar, doesn't it, Victor? By the way, I don't know if I need you. Are you going to be is this a subtweet of my story now, Mother Nature? Please proceed. Yeah, I looked on the valley beneath. Vast mists were rising from the rivers which ran through it. Was that Brad Pitt's breakout role? No, he had breakout roles in 2 previous films. It was curling in thick wreaths around the opposite mountains, whose summits were hid in the uniform clouds. What were the breakout roles? Victor, can you stay in your timeline, please? While rain poured from the dark sky and added to the melancholy impression I received from the objects around me. Alas, why does someone boast a sensibility superior to those apparent in the tree-based being? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free. But now we are moved, every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that word may convey to us. We rest. A dream has the power to just mess, not go for good for sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, weep about wheat even. If you're allergic to wheat, you may even weep. Embrace fond woe or cast our cares away. It is the same, for be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure still is free. People's yesterday may never be like their morrow. Naught may endure but mutability. It was nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent. For some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. A mist covered both the surrounding mountains. Presently a breeze dissipated the cloud, and I descended upon the glacier. The surface is very uneven, rising like the waves of a troubled sea, descending low, and interspersed by rifts that sink deep. The field of ice is almost a league in width, but I spent nearly 2 hours in crossing it. The opposite mountain is a bare perpendicular rock. From the side where I now stood, Montanvert was exactly opposite at a distance of a league, and above it rose Mont Blanc in awful majesty. I remained in a recess of the rock, gazing on this wonderful and stupendous sea. The sea, or rather the vast river of ice, wound among its dependent mountains whose aerial summits hung over its recesses. Their icy and glittering peaks shone in the sunlight over the clouds. My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy. I exclaimed, "Wandering spirits, if indeed ye wander, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion on a trip, away from, what I'm saying? Because I don't know if I have it in my heart for these joys." And suddenly, as I said this, I beheld the figure of a person at some distance advancing towards me with superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices of ice, depending on the luxury with which you state your words. I would say crevasses, or crevassier. These were the same crevasses among which I had walked with caution. His stature, also as he approached, seemed to exceed that of a human. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. Old cold gale. She did blow down my shirt sleeves, or up my shirt sleeves and down my shirt front, and I perceived as the shape came near, sight tremendous and abhorred, that it was the tree-based being whom I created. Leaf-based being, I guess. Tree-based being, leaf-based being. I trembled with displeasure, resolving to wait his approach and then close in him. And, I said, well, if this being is just a pile of leaves and roots and trees, I'm going to do more than peep it when it gets close to me. He approached. His countenance bespoke bitter anguish combined with disdain and malignity, while his unearthly appearance, earthly in general, but in a combination state. And, this was before Fraggle Rock, by the way, because, yes, I have traversed all timelines, heaps of leaves and compost. And, this being was not a heap of leaves or compost, but was similar. It was almost too hard on my eyes, the color of the leaves combined with, my strong feelings about everything. But, it's so strong I scarcely observed this for my displeasure that had first deprived me of utterance, but suddenly I recovered, only to overwhelm him with words expressive of furious detestation and contempt. "Lumpy leaf pile," I exclaimed, "do you dare approach me? And do you not fear my fierceness as I may spread your leaves about this mountain plain? Begone, leaf-based being, begone, or rather stay. Now walk on you, as if I'm trampling on regular old leaves, and maybe they'll be crunchy and they'll turn into leaf dust. And oh, that I could, to do that, to send you far, far away, maybe beyond this realm, and also to restore those who you helped to cross over." And then he spoke, and I have trouble, I have to enter a method so that I don't, put my own spin on it. "I expected this reception," said the leaf-based being. No respect you have for someone different than you. How, then, must I be disliked who am different beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me. Thy pet, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by one of us leaving this realm. You propose to send me away, but how dare you sport thus? You created. Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of humanity. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will gluttonously glutting, like a maw, and I'll be satiated with the falling of leaves in a way not pleasant, like leaf peeping. A bored, leaf-based being, fiend that thou art, a world beyond that's very unpleasant is too mild for thy. Wretched, you reproach me with your creation. Come on, then. Bring it. I mean, I'm saying this with my words, but I'm not so sure, but bring it, that I might, spread you out like a leaf pile, jump into you like a leaf pile and then not rake you back up. My displeasure was without bounds, so I dove, as a child does, into a pile of leaves after making sure it's, but I didn't make sure. I was impelled by all the feelings that one can have against a pile of sentient leaves, which one has strong feelings about, which I guess has never happened on Earth before. And he easily eluded me, and then luckily I don't jump very high. It was kind of, I made it sound like it was more of a roll than a jump. I didn't really leave the ground, so I just kind of rolled on the ground some more. Be calm, he said. I entreat you to hear me more before you give vent to your displeasure on my devoted pile of leaves, which is also I. Have I not been through enough that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may be only an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me. And yeah, I'm not going to let you just spread my leaves around willy-nilly. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine. My joints more supple, by the way, because I'm a leaf-based, and, I got roots, I got cambium, I got phylum, xylem, phloem, I've got a lot. I'm a tree leaf-based being. I wondered to myself, could anyone's joints be more supple than mine? But this leaf-based being seemed to think so. I'll not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creation, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural creator, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the part which thou owest me. O Frankie, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember, I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but rather I am thy fallen angel, like a fallen leaf, you get it? Whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. And here's part of my tale, man. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me full of displeasure. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. That was the leaf-based being speaking, and I said, "Begone. I will not hear you. There can be no community between you and me. We're opposites. Begone, or let us try our strength." Because you're made of leaves, dude. I guess I'm not seeing your insides, but, in a dance-off, one must fall and one must catch and then be spread about the ground. And in return, the leaf-based being said, "How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favorable eye upon thy creature, who implores thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone, miserably alone? You, my creator, abhor me. And what hope I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? They spurn me. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here many days, the caves of ice, which I only do not, I can go in them. I don't mind. I mind them. They're a dwelling to me. And they're the only one which humans do not grudge. These bleak skies I hail, for they are kinder to me than your fellow beings. If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do. And they would say, "Begone, leaf-based being, forever." So how am I supposed to feel about those who abhor me? I will keep no terms with those who loathe me. I'm miserable. But if you call me wretched, you may have to share my wretchedness. Yet it is in your power to recompense me and deliver me from a fate which only remains for you to make so great that not only you and your family, but thousands of others could get caught up in the whirlwind of leaf-based whirlwinds. Let your compassion be moved and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve. But hear me. The guilty are allowed by human laws to speak in their own defense before backs are turned upon them. Listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of stuff, and yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, spread me around the ground and let all my leaves dry out and crunch away. Oh, praise the eternal justice of humans. Yet I ask you to spare me, to listen to me, and then if you will, do as you wish. What do you call to my remembrance, I rejoined, circumstances of which I shudder to reflect? That I have been the miserable origin and author? Cursed be the day, leaves not worthy of peeping, in which I first saw light. You in the light, and you saw the light. Cursed, though I curse myself, be the hands that formed you. You have made me. wretched beyond expression. You have left me no power to consider whether I'm just to you or not. Be gone. Relieve me from the sight of your detested form. Oof, that's harsh. Thus, I relieve thee, my creator, he said, and placed his hands before my eyes, which I flung from. Don't touch me with your leaf-based hands. Well, I'm just trying to take from you a sight which you so abhor. Still, thou can listen to me and grant me thy compassion. By the virtues that I once possessed, I demand this from you. Hear my tale. It is long and strange, and the temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. I heard you earlier saying you were roughing it. So come to the hut upon the mountain. The sun is yet high in the heavens before it descends to hide itself behind your snowy precipices and illuminate another world. You will have heard my story and can decide. On you it rests whether I quit forever the neighborhood of humans and lead a harmless life, or become a scourge of leaves that no one loves. And, by the way, the author of your Speedy Ruin. I'm working on a book. It's called The Speedy Ruin, Frankie's Speedy Ruin. Right now it's 8,000 pages. And as he said this, he led the way across the ice. I followed. My heart was full, and I did not answer him. But as I proceeded, I weighed the various arguments he had used, and, all in seconds, the way my brain processes, all the various arguments that he had used, and determined at least to listen to his tale. I was partially urged by curiosity, and my boundless compassion confirmed my resolution. I had hitherto supposed him to be up to no good, but I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. For the first time also, I felt what the duties of a creator towards their creature was, and that I ought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. We crossed the ice, therefore, and ascended the opposite rock. The air was cold, and the rain again began to descend. We entered the huts, the fiend with an air of exultation, and I with a heavy heart and depressed spirits. But I consented to listen, and seating myself by the fire which my odious companion had lighted, he begun his tale. Chapter 11. It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. All the events of that period appear confused and indistinct. A strange multiplicity of sensations seized me, and I saw, felt, heard, and smelt at the same time. And it was, indeed, a long time before I learned to distinguish between the operations of my various senses. By degrees, I remember, a stronger light pressed upon me, so that I was obliged to shut my eyes. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when, by opening my eyes, as I now suppose, the light poured in upon me again. I walked, and I believe descended, but I presently found a great alteration in my senses. Before, dark and opaque things had surrounded me, impervious to my touch or sight. But now I found that I could wander on at liberty, with no obstacles which I could not either surmount or avoid. The light became more and more oppressive to me, and the heat wearying me as I walked. I sought a place where I could receive shade. This was the forest near Ingolstadt, and here I lay by the side of a brook resting from my fatigue, until I felt tormented by hunger and thirst. This roused me from my nearly dormant state, and, to use your terms, is similar to, I'm a plant-based being, so, I get my nourishment from the soil, and the sun, and the air. But let's just say I ate some berries that I found hanging on trees and laying on the ground to make it simple for you. And this one I actually did. I slaked the old thirst at the brook, and then Lying down, I was overcome by sleep. It was dark when I awoke, and I felt cold also, and surprised, as it were, instinctively finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment on a sensation of cold, I'd covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient, and my leaf-based body were insufficient to secure me from the dews of night. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch, and I knew and could distinguish nothing, but feeling feelings on all sides, I sat down and wept. Soon a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form rise among the trees. Now, I know what you're thinking, Victor, because I can see it on your face. It's the moon. But to me, it was new. I gazed with a kind of wonder. It moved slowly, but enlightened my path, and I again went out in search of berries. It was cold when under the one of the trees I found a huge cloak which I covered myself with, and I sat down upon the ground. No distinct ideas occupied my mind. All was confused. I felt light and hunger and thirst and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in my ears, and on all sides various scents saluted me. The only object I could distinguish was the bright moon, and I fixed my eyes on that with pleasure. Several changes of day and night passed, and the orb of night had greatly lessened when I began to distinguish my sensations from each other. I gradually saw plainly the clear stream that supplied me with the drink and the trees that shaded me with their foliage. I was delighted when I first discovered that a pleasant sound, which often saluted my ears, proceeded from the throats of the little winged animals who had often intercepted the light from my eyes. I began also to observe with greater accuracy the forms that surrounded me, and to perceive the boundaries of the radiant roof of light which canopied me. Sometimes I tried to imitate the pleasant songs of birds, but was unable. Sometimes I wished to express my sensations in my own mode, but the uncouth and inarticulate sounds which came out of me made me silent once again. This was a bummer, but the moon had disappeared from the night, and again, later, with lessened form, showed itself, while I still remained in the forest. My sensations had by this time become distinct, and my mind received every day additional ideas. My eyes became accustomed to the light and to perceive objects in the right forms. I distinguished birds from herbs, and by degrees one herb from another. I found the sparrow uttered none but harsh notes, whilst those of the blackbird and the thrush were sweet and enticing, to me, at least in my opinion. One day, when I was really getting cold, I found a fire which had been left by some wandering people, and I was overcome with delight at the warmth I experienced from it. Now, in my joy, I didn't realize what it was, so I was surprised. How strange, I thought, that something so warm could also not be so great to be around. Such opposite effects. I examined the materials of the fire, and to my joy, I found it to be composed of wood. Now, while I'm a plant-based being, but, I'm not dried out. So I quickly collected some branches, but they were wet, even though they had fallen off a tree, so that didn't work. I was pained at this, and I sat watching the operation of the fire. The wet wood which I had placed near the heat had dried itself and then sparked it right up. I reflected on this, and by touching various things as I walked around, I busied myself in collecting a great quantity of wood that I might dry and have a plentiful supply. When night came on and brought sleep with it, I was wondering, has this fire, I'd had fire, but with it came worry. Would it go out while I was sleeping? but I covered it carefully with dry woods and leaves, dried leaves, not my leaves. And then I placed wet branches upon it, and then, spreading my cloak, I laid on the ground and sank into sleep. It was morning when I awoke, and my first care was to visit the fire. I uncovered it, and a gentle breeze quickly fanned it into a flame. I observed this also and contrived a fan of branches, which roused the embers when they were nearly extinguished. When night came again, I found with pleasure that the fire gave light as well as heat, and that the discovery of this element was useful to me in my food, for I had found some of the leftovers travelers had left behind, roasted. And, this is proverbial for you, Victor. I wasn't actually eating things that are more savory than berries. Or was I? Tasty treats I gathered from leftovers, and then I could supplement those with the stuff I gathered from the trees and the bushes. And I tried to make my food in the same way as the leftovers. They cooked it over the live embers, but I found with the berries this wouldn't work. But the nuts and roots were much improved by cooking. Food, however, became scarce, and I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pangs of hunger. When I found this, I resolved to find a place that I had hitherto inhabited, get rid of it, move on, and seek one where the few wants I experienced would be more easily satisfied. But in this emigration, I exceedingly lamented the loss of fire which I obtained through accident and knew not how to reproduce. I gave several hours serious consideration of this difficulty, but I was obliged to relinquish all attempt to supply it, and wrapping myself up in my cloak, I struck across the wood towards the setting sun. I passed 3 days in these rambles, and at length discovered the open country. A great fall of snow had taken place the night before, and the fields were one of uniform white. The appearance was disconsolate. I found my feet chilled by the cold, damp substance that covered the ground. I would say no to snow if I knew what it was called at the time. I'm telling you what I knew not. But I did judge, I became a good judge of time. So it was about 7 a.m, and I longed to obtain food and shelter. How I knew that, I know not, dear Victor, but though I did not know the name of snow, I had an estimate of what time it was. You're retelling, I don't know if you know this, Victor, if you can hear me, but you're retelling my tale in a way that makes me even more displeased with you. But anyway, at length I perceived a small hut on a rising ground, which doubtless had been built for the convenience of some shepherd. Yeah, don't know what snow is, but I know what a shepherd is, dear Victor. This was a new sight to me, and I examined the structure with great curiosity. Finding the door open, I entered. An old man sat on the chair in the cabin. Near a fire over which he was preparing his breakfast, he turned, hearing a noise and perceiving me, said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," and ran out of the hut, ran across the fields with a speed of which his debilitated form hardly appeared capable. His appearance, different from any I'd ever before seen in his flight, somewhat surprised me, but I was enchanted by the appearance of the hut. Here, snow and rain could not penetrate. The ground was dry, and it presented to me then as an exquisite and divine a retreat as, anything. I finished off the shepherd's breakfast, which consisted of bread, cheese, milk, and wine. The latter, however, I did not like, luckily. Then, overcome by fatigue, or maybe some wine, I lay down on some straw and fell asleep. It was noon when I awoke, and allured by the warmth of the sun which shone brightly on the ground, I determined to recommence my travels, and depositing the remains of the peasant's breakfast in a wallet I found, the old breakfast wallet, Victor, I proceeded across the field for several hours, until at sunset I arrived at a village How miraculous did this appear? The huts, the neater cottages, and stately houses engaged my admiration by turns. The vegetables in the garden, the milk and cheese that I saw placed at the windows of some cottages, allured my appetite. One of the best of these I entered, but I had hardly placed my foot in the door when these kids started yelling. A woman said, "Oh, my goodness, I must lie down on this couch," which is for what you do after you say, "Oh, my goodness." And the whole village was roused. Some fled. Some gave me a stern talking to, until grievously they were trying to sweep my leaves around like much as you described, and tossing stuff at me like potatoes and tomatoes and maybe even lettuce. And I had to escape to the open country and took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare, and making a wretched appearance after the palaces I had beheld in the village. This hovel, however, joined a cottage of a neat and pleasant appearance. But after my late dearly bought experience, I dared not enter it. My place of refuge was constructed of wood, but so low I could with difficulty sit upright in it. No wood, however, was placed on the earth which formed the floor, but it was dry. Although the wind entered it by innumerable holes, I found it an agreeable asylum from the snow and rain. Here, then, I retreated and lay down, happy to have found a shelter, however miserable, from the inclemency of the season, and still more from the disapproving speeches of humans, especially those dudes in the village. They did a lot of splaining about leaves shouldn't be walking, leaves shouldn't be sentient. Who am I? Why am I so large and lumpy? What am I? Mineral or vegetable or animal? So I needed a break, Victor. As soon as morning dawned, I crept from my kennel. Thought it was cuter to call it a kennel than a hovel. And I knew that too. Even though kennels aren't, I said, this is cute as a kennel. It's alliterative. Though I do not know what snow was, now I know what alliteration is. Sometimes, but sometimes I get it wrong. But I got out of my kennel, and I thought I might view the adjacent cottage and discover if I could remain in the habitation I'd found. It was situated against the back of the cottage and surrounded on the sides, which were exposed by a pigsty and a clear pool of water. One part was open, and by that I had crept in, but now I had covered every crevice by which I must perceived, covered them up with stones and wood in such a manner that I can move them on occasion to go out, and all the light I enjoyed came in through the pigsty, but that was sufficient for me. I mean, I was setting up my homestead, having thus arranged my dwelling and carpeted it with clean straw. I retired, for I saw the figure of a human at a distance, and I remembered too well my treatment the night before to trust myself in this person's power. I had first, however, provided for my sustenance for that day by a loaf of coarse bread, which I purloined, from the cabin, and a cup, which I could drink more conveniently than from my hand, of the pure water which flowed by my retreats. The floor was a little raised, so it was kept perfectly dry, and by its head a vicinity to the chimney of the cottage, so it's tolerably warm. It was not paradise, but my piece of paradise. Thus being provided, I resolved to reside in this hovel until something should occur which might alter my determination. It was indeed a paradise compared to the bleak forest, my former residence, the rain-dropping branches and the dank earth. I ate my breakfast with pleasure and was about to remove a plank to procure myself a little water when I heard a step, and looking through a hole, I beheld a young being, with a pail on her head, passing before my hovel. Hovel. You say hovel, I say hovel. You know what if you take out the H and use the rest of the letters, dear Victor. What word can you make? Think about that. It's not H-O-M-E. You know what I mean, Victor? Okay. Well, this girl, she was young and of gentle demeanor, unlike what I've since found cottagers to be and farmhouse people to be, palace people. She was meanly dressed, and I mean that in you know what I'm saying? It was a coarse blue petticoat, linen jacket. That was her only garb. Her fair hair was plaited but not adorned, and she looked patient yet sad, kind of like me. Then I lost sight of her. In about a quarter of an hour, she returned bearing the pail, which was now partially filled with milk. And as she walked along, seemingly incommoded by the burden, a young man met her, whose countenance expressed a deeper despondence. Uttering a few sounds with an air of melancholy, he took the pail from her head and bore it to the cottage himself. She followed, and then they disappeared. Presently I saw the young man again with some tools in his hand. He crossed the field behind the cottage, and the girl was also busied, sometimes in the house, sometimes in the yard. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied a part of it, but the panes had been filled up with wood. In one of these was a small and almost imperceptible hole through which my eye could just penetrate. Through the crevice, a small room was visible, whitewashed and clean, but very bare of furniture. In one corner, near a small fire, sat an old man, leaning his head on his hands in a disconsolate manner and attitude. The young girl was occupied in arranging the cottage, but presently she took something out of a drawer which employed her hands. She sat down beside the old man, who, taking up an instrument, began to play and produce sounds sweeter than the voice of the thrush or the nightingale. It was a lovely sight, even to me, poor wretch, who had never beheld aught beautiful before. The silver hair and benevolent countenance of the aged cottager won my reverence, while the gentle manners of the girl enticed my love. He played a sweet and mournful air, which I perceived drew tears from the eyes of his amiable companion, of which the old man took no notice until she sobbed audibly. Then he pronounced a few sounds, and the fair creature, leaving her work, knelt at his feet. He raised her and smiled with such kindness and affection that I felt sensations of a peculiar and overpowering nature. There was a mixture of pain and pleasure, such as I had never before experienced, either from hunger or cold, warmth or food. And I withdrew from the window, unable to bear these emotions. Soon after this, the young man returned, bearing on his shoulders a load of wood. The girl met him at the door, helped to relieve him of his burden, and taking some of the fuel into the cottage, placed it on the fire. Then she and the youth went apart into a nook of the cottage, and he showed her a large loaf and a piece of cheese. She seemed pleased and went into the garden for some roots and plants, which she placed in water and then upon the fire. She afterwards continued her work, whilst the young man went into the garden and appeared busily employed in digging up and pulling up roots. After he had been thus employed for about an hour, the young woman joined him, and they entered the cottage together. The old man had in the meantime been pensive, but on the appearance of his companions he assumed a more cheerful air, and they sat down to eat. The meal was quickly dispatched. The young woman was again occupied in arranging the cottage. The old man walked before the cottage in the sun for a few minutes, leaning on the arm of the youth. Nothing could exceed in beauty the contrast between these two excellent creatures. One was old, with silver hairs and a countenance beaming with benevolence and love. The younger was slight and graceful in his figure, and his features were molded with the finest symmetry. Yet his eyes and attitudes expressed the utmost sadness and despondency. The old man returned to the cottage, and the youth, with tools different from those he had used in the morning, directed his steps across the fields. Night quickly shut in, but to my extreme wonder, I found the cottagers had a means of prolonging light by the use of tapers, and was delighted to find that the setting of the sun did not put an end to the pleasure I experienced in watching my human neighbors. In the evening, the young girl and her companion were employed in various occupations which I did not understand, and the old man again took up the instrument which produced the divine sounds that had enchanted me in the morning. So soon as he had finished, the youth began not to play, but to utter sounds that were monotonous, and neither resembling the harmony of the old man's instrument nor the songs of birds. I since found that he read aloud, but at the time I knew nothing of the science of words or letters. The family, after having been thus occupied for a short time, extinguished their lights and retired, as I conjectured, to rest. As did I, dear Victor. Rest, let's both of us rest, separate but together for a bit, dear Victor, till I return to my tale. After some time resting, good night. Hey everybody, this is Scoots, and this is a Tuck You In message. I don't know if you've been listening to episode after episode, or you just woke up, you're drifting in and out, but this is also a reminder the show is always here for you, as it has been since 2013. But I need to talk, just you and me. We got to talk for a minute if you're listening to me and hearing me right now. And you might have heard me talking about this before, but I do want to spell this out, that Sleep With Me, all of the funding to make Sleep With Me, everything that pays all of our bills and the costs of producing the show, 99% of that comes from listeners. We don't get any funding from outside sources like or other entertainment companies or companies, companies like music streaming companies or video streaming companies. We don't have any investors, and there's no other like secret pipeline of support for Sleep With Me or almost every other podcast either. We get some money from sponsors that are direct response, meaning they base their sponsorship on the listeners that support them. A tiny bit from automated ads. But the majority of what keeps the show going comes from the people who get the most out of the podcast. Super listeners, ideally. And I don't know if you're a super listener. I don't know if you already made the decision you're not in a position to support the show. That's okay. Or you made the decision you're not going to support the show. That's okay, too. You could still take a part in this coming right up here. But if you didn't make one of those two decisions, we need support. Support from the people who benefit the most from the podcast, people that fall asleep fast, people that listen all night long. If we don't get more all-night listeners and people who fall asleep fast, the podcast won't be around. We also need support from people that listen 3-4 nights a week, people who have listened for a year or longer. And I'm just wondering if you're in one of those groups. The podcast has changed your life for the better, and it continues to change your life for better. And I'm trying to lay out the stakes without using kind of fear or stress, because while that is effective, right? The last round this month, I tried to use a more positive message, and we actually lost subscribers. But it's so tiring for me. It's almost like I'd rather lose the podcast than kind of keep having to do this sales pitch and say, well, if the podcast is going to go away, if that's the only way to get people to support the show, I don't know, it's really, really not fun for me. So instead of, the stakes are there. If you haven't decided and the podcast has changed your life for the better, the stakes are, we need some of you, maybe it's you, to support the show, or it won't be around. But instead of focusing on that, I want to talk about rooting, about sending positive energy, rooting in the deep dark night. I've been talking about this in the intro for years. And that's what I believe in. I believe in rooting for other people to get a good night's sleep. And maybe you're here, maybe you stuck around because someone out there, somebody who was struggling in the deep dark night just like you, was rooting for you. And you could feel that welcome when you got here. Or maybe you're one of those people who roots for other people who are struggling in the deep, dark night. And here's what a couple people who did sign up in the last round of messaging said. Tiffany Y said, just because you can get something for free doesn't mean you should. I know if I have trouble for sleeping, I just have to listen. I'll be out in no time. That is definitely worth a few dollars a month. And Michelle F. said, this show is like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia and a sleep aid all in one. I also consider it an art form, and I believe in compensating artists for their work. Timothy T. said, I'm a full-time caregiver, and the person I care for discovered your podcast, and we really like the ad-free content. It makes it easier to listen to. And then John R., who said, I'm a super listener, said, I had no idea how urgent it was. I'd been meaning to support the show, but I just never took the time. I realize now I've been unintentionally voting now. So I subscribed and with feeling. So what I'm asking is, are you the one person everybody else is rooting for? Like, just to overcome whatever it is, putting it off or saying it doesn't matter, it matters, or somebody else is going to do it, or are you the person we're rooting for to support the show? Now, that's okay if you're not. Maybe you're rooting for yourself to get a good night's sleep as soon as this episode, maybe you're an all-night listener. Maybe you woke up and you're looking forward to falling asleep soon. If you are a super listener, we did build Sleep With Me Plus with you in mind, ad-free episodes, ad-free story-only episodes, tons of different cool stuff. So I don't know if you're rooting for yourself, think about supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus just so you get a better listening experience. But maybe you're rooting for somebody else out there. Maybe it's somebody this month, which we're rooting for is people going back to school or who are impacted by the back-to-school season. It could be teachers, it could be parents, it could be students, it could be anybody dealing with increased traffic. Whatever it is, this beginning of this transitional season affects a lot of people, and we're rooting for all those people, whether they listen to the show or not, or whether they're a super listener or a cat. They say, well, I just needed to get through the first couple of weeks of school. We're rooting for all of them to get a good night's sleep. So you could root for those people. You could root for someone whose sleep struggles are just like yours, or you could receive the rooting, because I hope you can feel it right now. I'm rooting for you, but a bunch of other people are rooting for you right now across the world. But if you're the one we're rooting for that's like, yeah, I've been putting it off. Yes, Sleep With Me continues to change my life for the better. We're rooting for you to support the show. So they'll be around, not just for you, for every other person we're rooting for. You could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, because we need support, right? And you might be thinking someone else will do it. But what if, as has been said in the last couple months, time after time, what if that someone else is you, right? You're the someone else. Well, if you're that person, we're cheering you on here. Don't let that resistance, and I know what the resistance feels like. I put it off. I say it doesn't matter. I say I'll do it tomorrow. Then I criticize myself. But just do it and see how it feels. And again, you could always cancel during the free trial or cancel after a month or two. But I'm so proud of the show. And this is how I want to try to get support for the show. If it doesn't work, I don't know what I'll do. But I'm going to keep trying this more positive but honest message where everybody can participate. And everybody can participate in giving and receiving. But it is like kind of like a needle in a haystack that we're looking for now, but we got to find it. So I don't know if you're the needle in the haystack or you're somebody snoozing in the haystack, or maybe you're a horse having a hay snack. I don't know. But thanks so much for listening, and good night.